We are live. I'm so excited to be here with all of you and, of course, with you, Alexis, tonight, as this is our first, or I guess our first official live stream of our podcast episode, but our second episode on the podcast.
It's the first one that everybody knows that we have a podcast.
Yeah. So this is really exciting. And we had a little bit of technical difficulties when it came to live streaming from our YouTube channel. We had to wait 24 hours to get like an approval of some sort. So we are here on my channel, which is fine.
No biggie.
It is what it is, not a big deal. And so just wanted to let everyone know that the next live stream will be on our YouTube channel, Journey Through the Universe. So you can follow us there, subscribe, and participate and be with us in the next live stream. So I'm really excited to open up that space and to, just share more and deepen our understanding and connection to the dream space. So I also want to share, and I'm sure, there are people that will watch this later, but I want to share, being that we are recording this for our podcast. So these live streams will be our podcast episodes. If you are participating in the chat, that's going to be included in the episode. So I know you already assume that people are going to hear the replay anyways on YouTube. So I'm sure it's not a big deal, but I just wanted full disclosure, like whatever you share, what we respond to will be also on our podcast, like on Spotify and of course on YouTube. So if that's wonderful for you, if you don't mind, please, I invite you to show up in the chat and share with us, say hello, and share your dreams and perspectives and any questions you have for us. Alexis, do you have anything before we officially get started that you want to add?
I just wanted to say that I am so excited that we launched the podcast. I really hope you guys continue listening and participating if you're comfortable. This means so much to both of us, and just opening that conversation up for everyone, and learning together is just such a joy. So I want to thank you all for being here with us for all of the conversations and hopefully more.
Awesome. All right. Well, this is it. This is official. Welcome, everyone, to the second episode of Journey Through the Innerverse. I am Urania, and
I'm Alexis.
Yes, and we're here to share and explore the dream realm, dreams, astral travel, and mysticism. So excited about this. And our topic in this episode is going to be dream within a dream. Also, false awakening is working its way in here because naturally there was a bit of confusion that came forth of, is it the same thing? Is it not? And Alexis, I don't know if you even remember, but when we discussed doing this topic, I think I said false awakening and you said dream within a dream. And so it was interesting that and it wasn't like, oh, what's this? Is it not the same thing? It was more so like, oh, dream within a dream sounds better. And I feel that people will recognize that more so than false awakening. So we went with that. So it's interesting to see through our studies of, what these experiences are, and also reflecting on our experiences, that there actually is some sort of difference between the two, but kind of like the same thing, sort of. So we're going to discuss. Right, exactly. So it's interesting just how it started. So we will be discussing this. And of course, we invite you to share your perspective, your experiences, and your questions and comments in the chat. Jen is here. Jen says hello. Jim says hello. Hello. Thank you for being here. So excited. All right. So we're going to start by defining, as we always do, what we mean by this topic or these terms, just so we're all on the same page. So dream within a dream. What I've come across, because Alexis and I will both share our own findings of what this means and also with our experiences. But dream within a dream, from what I discovered, means when a person experiences the feeling of dreaming while already dreaming. So you're dreaming within a dream, right? And then on the flip side, with false awakenings, False awakenings are vivid dreams that involve the feeling of waking while still asleep. They can include realistic images, confusion, anxiety, or being jolted awake by a scare. So there's like some sort of intensity to the false awakenings, and could be also with dream within a dream. And so we'll kind of get to the quote unquote bottom of this to see, what these differences are and if they really are different. So what were your findings, Alexis, with the meanings of these?
So I found a few things. The one that I feel like is really to the point for the definition of dreaming within a dream is one portion of a dream enacted within the envelope of another. I thought that was really concise,
I
really to
like
the
that.
point, made
Yeah.
a lot of sense. And that was written as an abstract by Eugene J. Mann in 2002, which is interesting because finding information like this was actually kind of hard. So I was happy I got like a, a student approved or college approved type article to read about that. Um, Carl Jung believed that the dream within a dream is where one dreams that one is dreaming, signaling an awakening. And from my experience, I definitely have either gone to sleep, passed out like suddenly, or been killed. And those are when I dream within my dream. And that's definitely
Mm.
been an interesting experience. But the two, false awakening and dream within a dream, aren't that off. The difference that I found was that there's a logical understanding of the dream um, being lucid. So, like, the dream within the dream is like you're aware that you're dreaming, where the false awakening, the first part of it, you're not aware yet. Like, you feel like you're awake. It feels like real life. And at some point, when you have this false awakening, you either enter the lucid state or you wake up. And I think that's really
Mm.
interesting. Um, false awakenings are very, very vivid. I've
Mm-hmm.
had a few false awakenings where I feel like I lived a whole day and then I wake up and I'm like, okay, can we not? Can we not? Like
Mm-hmm.
it's like your whole day was kind of like ripped out from underneath you because it was a dream.
Yeah.
So yeah, I thought you covered that well, and I'm still like I'm going over the dreams that I've experienced with this, and
Yeah.
it's just always like a funny realization, either with whether I wake up in the dream or I wake up for real. And I'm just like, that felt
Yeah.
like so much time in my waking life just went by, and now I'm just here.
Yeah. So I like that you mentioned Jung, as I found a little something on Reddit about Jung, because as I was, just looking and researching this specific experience, there wasn't really a lot out there. Even when I went back to the books, like I have a lucid dreaming book. And then I have a book right now from the library on nightmares and sleep paralysis. And then I went back to Lucid Dreaming Gateway to the Inner Self by Robert Wagner. I went back to that book, and there was like mentionings of it. And so, yeah, of course, I then went to the internet and I found on Reddit. So someone asked about Jung's perspective on a dream within a dream or false awakenings. And so I'm just going to read this, what they actually quoted Jung's perspective. And here it says, okay, so the interpretation of this complicated dream structure must be carefully undertaken, and no set approach is always appropriate. Such dreams tend to exemplify a truth that is seldom appreciated. The process of individuation, which means moving towards a more complete personality structure, so you kind of coming into wholeness within yourself. So in it, it's fine. Sorry, let me just back that up. The process of individuation in its fine structure resembles the creation of a new world, not just a revision of the ego within the old existing world of consciousness. It is not only the ego that changes, but the entire structure of the world alters, including the role of the significant of significant other persons in the life of the dreamer. So essentially, this is saying that the dream within a dream, or the sense of awakening in itself, and depending, and I feel this leans more to dream within a dream and not the intense scariness of, say, a false awakening. The dream within a dream is kind of an indicator of some aspect of your ego, your dream ego, or yourself waking up to something, right? And you would look more deeply into the dream, the nature of the dream, to get an understanding of what it is that you are waking up to. And so I thought that was interesting, just coming across that briefly when considering just the differences between the false awakening and the dream within a dream. So I thought that was pretty important as
I love
well.
that. I
Yeah.
love that. And when I was looking into this too, there's a couple different ideas that people have when thinking about a dream within a dream. One being that it could be an escape. Your anxiety is causing you to jump and almost avoid situations, escaping your situations. Another one could be diving deeper into the conscious or unconscious, going down layers into your unconscious and revealing deeper aspects of yourself. And, when I was reading up on this between like Freud and Jung, Freud really thinks that the first initial dream is kind of like a throwaway dream, and the
Mm,
second dream is what is supposed to reveal
interesting.
the message. Where Jung really feels that each layer of like each dream within a dream is just as important as the last. And I have
Mm-hmm.
to agree more so with Jung on this again, because,
Always.
I give Freud, of course, all the credit he deserves, but there is a level of disconnect that I have with his studies, that I kind of fill in those gaps with Jung and other dream analysts, interpreters, and studies. So the first dream being not as important and kind of like throwaway, I don't agree with that. I
Yeah, it
feel
doesn't
like all the
resonate.
messages you receive are messages you're supposed to receive. But I do
Mm-hmm.
feel like a deep connection, especially when reading this and thinking about it, about, diving deeper into yourself and going deeper down the layers, dealing with things, like going down further into that basement of memories and
Mm-hmm.
experiences and traumas that have kind of been pushed to the side, or even bigger than that, different lifetime issues, different, like from past lives, things that our soul or spirit is just trying to understand, or even like messages from our higher selves or higher beings, depending on what you believe in. I know there's a lot of people within like religious groups, with Christians, they feel as though it could be demonic, or it could be messages
Mm-hmm.
directly from God, which is interesting. Like there's so many understandings around it. And the one of the really interesting things that I came across too is, that it is thought in neuroscience that these dreams are caused by the brain moving towards an awakened state while the body
Mm-hmm.
stays asleep. So
Mm-hmm.
these false awakenings are the dream, like the false awakenings that we have when it's kind of just like you think you're in the dream, you think you're waking up, you think you're living your life. It has a lot to do with your brain ready to wake up, but your body and everything's still sleeping, which I thought was
Yeah.
interesting in itself, just from
Yeah.
the science aspect, just how the brain is connected and what the effects are from
Yeah.
that aspect. And that leads right to, the idea, like the experience of sleep paralysis,
Mm-hmm.
where the brain is
Mm-hmm.
waking up but the body's not, and there's that disconnect, which is, it's so interesting. I feel like I can talk in circles, so I'm sorry about
Yeah.
that.
No, I love listening. And so I think we could probably jump into the dreams that we have to share, because everything
Yes,
that you're saying is like, I want to say more, but I want to share the dream or the experience I actually had this morning. Thank you, Psyche. Thank you, just my essence, for gifting me with like right on the spot, like day of experience with this
absolutely.
topic. So I'm really excited to share. First, I do want to just come back to the chat here. We have a couple comments. So Jim says, I had a work dream was a bicycle mechanic that was incredible in scale and detail, old-fashioned feeling and look. Scale was bigger than anything I would ever imagine consciously. And so, Jim, you have to tell us, did you have some sort of like false awakening or dream within a dream type experience with that? We would love to hear more about it. Mary says, made it. Hello, all,
Hi,
or hey,
Mary.
all. Hi, Mary. Welcome in. Jay says that as far as dream within a dream or false awakening, it can be a loop as well, which can be caused by getting kicked out of a dream, astral, like getting kicked out of the astral plane, and that causes the false awakenings, which instead of waking up, you are still aware. Yeah, I
So
can definitely see that.
on that, so I have down the information from looping too. So when I was looking into this, one of my funniest sources is WikiHow. I love WikiHow. They're always so, I don't know, with the cartoons and everything. I just
I
love
was
it.
gonna say yes, the images.
But they do the different levels. So the first or like the different kinds. So like false awakening is one kind, and then the lucid dream within a dream.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other thing would be looping, where it's not just one dream within a dream, it's actually a continuation of dreams within
Yeah.
dreams. And I actually have that and the second one, the dream within the dream the most. I don't have a whole lot of false awakenings, which is
Hmm.
interesting.
Yeah, we'll touch on that too. So we got to
Yes.
remember to circle around about,
Yes.
well,
Sorry.
why might that be the case? No, it's great. It's great. Okay, so let's see what we have here. Jen says I've had dreams like that over the last few months consistently. Wow. So yeah, we'd love to hear more about that. Jay says I've had really weird dreams recently, either past live dreams or just medicine invoked ones. Okay, so we're just sharing what's going on with our dream space. I love it. Let's see what else we have here. Okay, cool. Mary says I've been dreaming one word message lately. Okay, cool. So we're just
Ooh.
updating everyone with the dream space. I didn't even start with the current cosmic climate.
Oh my God,
And
I
right now,
completely
yeah,
forgot.
we forgot to share about that. But right now, we are under or within the veil of that powerful Pisces full moon, lunar eclipse, harvest moon, all the amplification and enchantment and all of the glamour of Pisces as a full moon, as an eclipse, and like a really big energetic moon. And so I'm not surprised. Like a lot of us have probably been experiencing like really vivid dreams leading up to this point too. And I'm really excited to see what the eclipses that will, bounce back and forth between Pisces and Virgo for the next year and a half how that will really influence our dream space. And also, you want to look to the area of life that Pisces and Virgos rules within your chart. And if you have any planets there, what that might indicate for you, the areas of life that might be, show up more in your dream space. There's so many ways, and, we're just experimenting and experiencing. And so that's a good place to, or that's a good thing to keep in mind as we are witnessing our dreams and how they've been flowing. So thank you for sharing that. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and share
Yes,
my
please.
experience this morning. So for context, last night I went to bed, or before I went to bed, I watched Beetlejuice, the original or the first one. So
Oh,
the
that's
other
so
ones
funny
are,
because I'm
yeah. So,
wearing the.
oh, nice, perfect, yes. So I had another dream that kind of gave me Beetlejuice vibes, which is actually a dream, but this one was a false awakening. So let's go ahead and get to it. All right. And this was this morning. So, yes, like under that energy of that Pisces blood moon eclipse. And fun fact, I am bleeding with the blood moon, which is awesome because for full disclosure or TMI, maybe I guess I should say, and Alexis, I can say this, right?
Yeah,
Like, okay.
absolutely.
Because we kind of talked about it before, but we were both scheduled to have our period, our moons to bleed with the lunar eclipse, which was
Mhm.
yesterday, which was also the day that we launched our podcast. And some of you are familiar with the menstrual cycle, where when you bleed, that's the beginning of your cycle.
Oh,
Right. So it was so interesting that we were beginning our moon cycle. We were birthing our podcast with this blood moon, like big, abundant energy of Pisces dealing with dreams. And yeah, so all that goodness and starting this new cycle and new beginning with the energy of this moon and our podcast. And Alexis and I both share Scorpio rising. And so the Pisces part of our chart is dealing with creative endeavors, also children, which I was like, this is our baby. So it's right in alignment. And there was another synchronicity. Yeah, creative. Yeah, all those things, right? The fifth house topic. So with that said, I ended up getting mine a day early. So I got mine the day before. Alexis got hers today, and then we birthed our podcast in between. So it's like the power of three going on here, which is awesome.
I love it. I love it.
Yes, it was great.
And it's so funny too, because when we were planning the day and time release for our launch, you looked at the timing, but we didn't know it was a full moon or an eclipse.
Yeah, I didn't even pay attention to that, which is crazy because I'm the astrologer. I'm like, okay, what's the best possible day? Because we decided to, I think we were discussing this seriously in July. And so we're like, what's the best possible day? Because we were like so amped. We're like, we got to get this out like maybe in August, and Mercury is retrograde. So we're like, okay, no, that's not a really good time. We don't want to release while Mercury's retrograde. And so it just so happened. And I'm sure I saw that it was a full moon, but it didn't register because the time that we did it was not at the peak time of the full moon. It was like, hours before. And so once we got closer, we're just like, oh, shoot, this is like the lunar eclipse, full moon, harvest moon. And then like the day before, we're like, oh my God, and we're scheduled to get our moons. So it was incredible.
It was so funny.
It was like, you really can't make this stuff up. Yeah, it was like literally divine timing. And so speaking of the cycle and the power of three, this morning was day 3 for me on my cycle. So that was where all that came from. So getting to the experience. So I had awakened laying in bed as usual, processing that Wednesday in Sidori had me sandwiched between them. So one was on one side, the other one was on the other end of the bed. And I'm laying there, allowing the daily ritual thoughts flowing through my mind. And I notice, or rather I hear computer keys typing. No one is there. And I look over to where I'm hearing the keys typing to confirm no one was there. So I looked over to my end table and I saw a black keyboard, like a computer keyboard, and the keys were moving by themselves. Oh. So immediately I think there's a ghost here. And as soon as I had this thought, I knew I was dreaming. I knew I wasn't awake. And so I could have explored the room or tried to make commands of the dream, but instead I began to wake myself up and was in a state of sleep paralysis. So I wanted to wake myself up because it was like, I'm like, oh, I have things to do. I want to get up before my daughter and like take care of some things. And, so it was like, oh, like you were saying, my brain was awake and processing and wanting to do all the things. And my body was like, nah, no, you're good. So naturally I entered this feeling of sleep paralysis. I could feel myself panicking a little more so because I was anxious to awake as I had several things to do. So lately, or for a while, when I have sleep paralysis, I tend to just like, I know to calm myself and be chill and breathe, and it ends really quickly. But I was just in this space in my head where it's like, oh, but I got to do all these things and I don't even have time for that. I just got to get up. So yeah,
I don't have time for this.
I don't have time to be sitting here. But it was weird because I was hearing the typing, right? And so the things though that I had to do was really exciting. And so I was also just aware of this experience and what we were going to talk about. So I was actually in this space, excited to get up and write this dream because I knew that I was having a false awakening. So all of this realization in that space. And so that's when I woke up. And then eventually I woke up. So it was really short. But the questions I had following as I wrote this, and then after I wrote it, I was like, okay, so what was up with the false awakening location? What I've realized is that when I've had these false awakening experiences, thank you, Wednesday. You guys can hear me, see me? Because speaking of keyboards, she stepped on it. You can hear me, right? I'm good. Okay.
Yeah.
I just lost your screen. All right. Thanks, Wednesday. Okay, so I asked myself, what was up with the false awakening location? Why is it always tends to be in the bedroom? Like it's like real life things, right? And then also in those spaces, especially now that I've had continuous experiences of lucid dreaming, why I just felt I didn't feel compelled to command the dream. Whereas when you wake up in a dream, when you're lucid, you're in a lucid dream, you right away you're like, oh, what do I want to do? At least I'm like that. I'm like, what do I want to do? Who do I want to see? Where do I want to go? With this, it was different. So I kind of asked myself, is this an in-between space? Is it false awakenings? Are they lucid dreams? Like, what's the difference? And where do you awake in your experience of a false awakening? So those were the questions. And I'll just say the Beetlejuice influence was the keyboards. Like I felt like there was a ghost there, so it was just like kind of that, because it wasn't scary, but it was just like, oh, this is
Yes,
interesting. Yeah, so
absolutely. I
I
know
felt that
exactly what you're
energy.
talking. I love that it was in your conscious, so you were able to ask the questions, like knowing that we are gonna have this conversation too, and you had the dream, like you had the dream of the false awakening right before our conversation about it. So like you had
Yeah.
the questions ready to go. That I just find that so interesting because all of my other dreams, like I didn't really question them, you know. I didn't think too much about what I was experiencing with that. So the fact that you were answering the questions like that is it's really cool to have like right on the spot after dreaming.
Yeah.
That
And
makes
it was
sense.
just really, it really emphasizes that what you mentioned as far as like this, the neuroscience research with that is that we are like our brain is really active, but our body isn't. And that's a major point when it comes to just observing sleep paralysis or experiencing it. And that was something I always knew from the beginning, was that I'm like, okay, my mind is awake, but my body, like they haven't integrated, they haven't caught up to one another. And so that just the act of in that false awakening, in that space, I'm having those typical mental annoying thoughts and like, oh, but I'm going to write this thing down and I'm going to do this and recalling everything. And so I wasn't experiencing that space of even the in between. I was already in my head and in my waking conscious life, but things haven't aligned and synced up properly for me to actually physically get up. So I thought that was interesting.
That was so interesting. I love that I love that dream. It was like simplistic, but it was also just that's what could you imagine rolling over in bed and the keys on your keyboard are being typed and nobody's there?
Yeah,
Like
I was like,
that,
and I looked at it, I was like, okay, there's a ghost here, but also there's no keyboard on my end table.
who
Like
put that
there's
there?
yeah. And it was funny because I can feel the energy of the like what they call day residue. So day residue is when, you know, whatever you experience during the day will sometimes filter into your dream space. And I remember like every so often, and this happened last night where I'm typing and if I'm doing a lot on my computer, which I was yesterday, I like the sound of typing. Like when I'm typing
Mm-hmm.
really fast, I don't know, it's like that, what is it, ASMR type
Yep.
situation. And so I was feeling that and like connecting with that yesterday. And so it's interesting that that was what showed up in my dream, like in that false awakening.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, that was
I
really
love
cool.
that. I love that. That's so cool. I love that. I know I said this already. I just love that it was you had the dream before our conversation. So it's like fresh and new
So
because like
fresh.
I had such a random dream last night and I wish I would have had like at least one of the two options.
Yeah.
Just one of the two options fresh. But I do have stuff to share and
Yeah. I'm ready.
I'll start with my false awakening, which is probably one of the most significant false awakenings I've have had. In fact, it felt otherworldly. Like it was so weird. So for context, the night prior, I got drunk with my husband, and we had been like just hanging out, drinking, having fun. And I don't remember, like we didn't go to bed consciously. We went to bed drunk. So I wake up in this dream and my head is aching. I'm nauseous. And it's like I'm waking up from with a hangover. So I'm waking up with a
Oof.
hangover and I'm looking around and I'm not in my space. I'm not in my house. This is not my bed. I'm laying in bed, like I can remember the sheets were like cream and the blanket was white, and there's like this huge room I was in, and like toys everywhere, like as if they have kids. And like I look to the left of me, and there's like this man curled up sleeping on one
Yeah,
side,
okay, I remember this one.
and then on the other side there's a woman sitting up with coffee in her hand. And I'm like, where, what is going on? But like I genuinely
Yeah,
was,
that's
I was experiencing this like I had done something insane while I was blackout drunk, and I was convinced
yeah.
I ended up somewhere else. So I'm laying in bed, and I look over to the woman, and I look over to the dude, and I'm like, what is happening? And I'm like touching my face, and I remember feeling my face and just being in so much pain. And then I like had a piercing, like a dermal right here. And I
Mm-hmm.
remember like when I first, because if you ever get a piercing, you know what it feels like if you like touch the piercing right
Mm-hmm.
after you get it done. It's painful. So I had that, and I was like, oh, what the hell? And the woman next to me was basically just like, yeah, you had us go do that last night. And I'm like, what? So a couple kids run in the room, and they're making some noise, and I'm just like absolutely shaken. Like, where am I? Who are these people? Well, I know who they are, but I'm not going to mention them on here. And I was confused. The woman basically woke up the husband and was like, told the kids that he was going to make breakfast, and he went and did that. And when he closed the door, we had a conversation, and I was like, where am I? And she was like, you're in Scotland. And I'm like, how did I get to Scotland? I don't have a passport. How did I get here? She was like, I don't know, you showed up at our house last night. And I'm like, excuse me,
This is so wild. Like
excuse
this
me.
stream is crazy.
So I'm like, did I really? She's like, yeah. I'm like, oh my god. And I was just like, I was just so freaked out. And then she leaned over and kissed me. And I'm like, what the hell? And she's like, isn't this what you wanted? Isn't this what you came for? And I was like, okay, maybe, sure.
You're like, did I say
So,
that? Okay, cool.
NSFW warning, this part is not safe for work if you're listening to the podcast. But I she ended up like having sex with me. And then she left the room. And I'm just like, okay. Her husband comes back in, has sex with me, and then he leaves the room. Now, at this point, I'm still convinced this is happening. I get out of bed, and I
Like
run
this is
into,
real life.
yeah, I run into the bathroom. It's so weird because I was paying attention. Like, I could feel everything, like I was in a lucid dream. And I remember this is where I started to kind of, because for me, the false awakening wasn't like all of a sudden I know it's a dream. It's like things
Yeah.
start to
Like
seem
slowly
fishy
reveal.
and then
Yeah. Yeah.
slowly reveal. So I run into the bathroom. I'm going through my purse. I find my phone. I called, like, I see he called a bunch of times. I call him back. I'm like, babe, I'm at so and so's house in Scotland. I don't know how I got here, but I just slept with them both. And I don't know how I'm getting home. And like we had a very quick conversation. I hung up, and then I was like panicking, looking through my purse, like, where's my passport? How am I gonna get home? I was so scared that I
Yeah.
could not get back to my
Well,
house.
here's the interesting panic energy of the like the
Yeah, the
stress. That's a thing
anxiety.
of the false awakenings.
Yeah.
I've heard that. Yeah.
So
And experienced that.
I go and I leave the room, and I walk through like what would be like a nice sized living room, like not super big, but just nice sized, through like an open kitchen and outside. And I remember walking outside, it felt like cool, like winter, but not quite
Mm.
snowy or wet. It was like just dry, cold air. And one of the people that I had slept with was out there, and he went back inside and came back out with like a cup of coffee, and we sat there, and he was like, so how are you going to get home? And I'm like, dude, I don't know how I got here. I have no money. I don't know where my passport is because I never got one. So I have no idea how I'm going to get home. Now, he ended up driving me to the like airport. He went in, he tried to get me a ticket. At this point, I started to realize that I was dreaming and I started to just become lucid. And like I
Mm-hmm.
called my dad because he couldn't get the plane ticket for me, even though he offered to pay for it. He couldn't get it because I didn't have a passport. So I called my dad. Like I was standing by a forklift. I called my dad. I was like, "Hey, I'm in Scotland. I need you to bring me a passport so I can get home." And he like just came. Like he was just there. Like he
Yeah,
was
he
like,
just
"Okay,"
popped
and
up.
then
Yeah.
fused into Scotland with me in that moment. I was like, "All right, I'm dreaming." So then it was like it was just so I was like, "This is okay. This is real." I had but that was on the phone and then in person. This isn't real. But that was the false awakening. And it's one of the funniest and strongest ones I've
Yeah,
had where like
that's
I
crazy.
almost never have false awakenings. I
Yeah.
usually like when I have any kind of dream like this, it's a dream within a dream or a looping
Mm-hmm.
where it's 3 to 4 dreams within a
Well, that
dream.
kind of makes sense too. The way that your false awakening was experienced was almost like a dream within a dream, because initially I was like, wait, like this seems like more like a dream within a dream, but there were some interesting points from the false awakening experience, because it's literally there's I feel there's a common experience of waking up in your bed, or in this case in someone else's bed, right?
Yeah,
But it's like that waking up in a bed, I think that feels really similar to, I think that's like a common thing for the false awakening specifically that
I
I'm
think
just putting
so
together in
too.
my head. Yeah.
Yeah, because my dream within a dream, I'm going to share a dream within a dream. It's not going to be super long,
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
the way that I go through my dream within a dream is usually like dream shifting.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'll either go to sleep and wake up in another dream, or
Oh,
I'll
so it's like the
die
reverse. Yeah.
and wake up in another dream, or I'll like spontaneously pass out and I'm just waking up in another dream. and
Interesting.
and the feel like the feeling of waking up in a dream because you're becoming lucid. Like I always
Mm-hmm.
know, like it's such a it's so
Yeah.
consistent now that I just know when I'm going from one dream to the next, but they're always so
Yeah.
interesting. And I never
Yeah.
thought about it too much until we got onto the topic of sharing
Yeah.
this, because now that I think about it, there's like going from comparing the 2 dreams that I would have, or 3 or 4 dreams if it were a loop, and going through and seeing possibly how, it could be a surface level problem and then a deeper problem that I'm dealing with, and then an even deeper problem that I'm dealing with, and kind of like going through my subconscious and trying to problem solve and figure out how to get through things that I won't face consciously,
Mm-hmm.
or just jumping, that
Yeah.
aspect of jumping. It's such an interesting experience.
Yeah. I'm curious for those of you listening and live, and also you can comment on our Spotify podcast, which Jen, I know you did, and someone else had made a comment on our podcast on Spotify. So thanks. That's so much fun to see
Thank you
that
so
space
much.
like interacting. But yeah, I'm curious if any of you have experienced false awakenings of this sort. And like I said, one of the common things I'm seeing is that you're waking up like in a bed. And sometimes it seems like there tends to be some sort of anxiety with that comes with it, and some sort of panic at times. And I know I had noticed in my studies is that it could, like, the false awakenings can be as a result of stress, like going to bed with stress or just like not getting enough sleep, and there's just a lot going on, which makes sense for me. I've been feeling a bit lately both of those, and so yeah, you're just going to bed with a lot of energy, and so you might experience that false awakening. So yeah, definitely let us know in the chat. Let us know in the comments if you're watching or listening to the replay. Also, one thing I wanted to ask you, Alexis, isn't Scotland like one of the places like you would love to go to? Like,
Yeah,
is it like, or
it
I don't know.
is.
I feel
No,
like
it
we
is.
we
But
talked about this before,
it wasn't
like the
as high on
landscape.
my list when I had that dream.
Mm,
It has
okay.
been a question mark for a while because I had a bunch of places I wanted to go. But
Mm-hmm.
after I had that dream, I like it highlighted it even more weirdly, and I've
Mm-hmm.
been really leaning into like, all right, I'm gonna start planning because this is something I actually
Yeah.
want to do.
Interesting. So there
Yeah.
was some sort of awakening. Like, who knows? Like,
Yeah.
that kind of brought that feeling and desire. And so when you actually go there, I have a feeling that there's going to be something like magical and awakening for you.
Oh,
So
a
we'll
hundred
definitely have to
percent.
revisit this.
100%. I tell people when I talk about this, I'm like, look, I don't know how to explain it, but there's something like a part of my soul that's over there that's calling me home. And I'm like,
Yeah.
I don't know what it is. It's not like I have a strong Scottish lineage. Like I know I have
Mm-hmm.
family roots from Scotland, but I'm a mutt. So it's
Yeah.
not like it's like I'm going for family. But there's something in my soul that's
Something.
calling
Yeah.
me home.
Yeah. I love that. Okay, so Jay says, yeah, it's very rare, but to me, it seemed like I was in some place I shouldn't have been, and I feel like I was woke up, but obviously, I feel like I woke up, but obviously, I wasn't awake. Yeah, interesting. Okay, so I want to hear about your dream within a dream. I only had the one example, and I'm sure we'll revisit this topic in some form, so I'll have to share another one at another time. But I want to hear your dream within a dream.
Okay, so the one I'm going to share, I had in June of this year. So it was June 6th,
Mhm.
2024. So the initial dream, the first dream I'll start with, well, obviously. um, so I dreamt that I was working at the frame shop. My boss came from the back with a piece of art, kind of like a potato bag texture, and a black print on it. When I brought it over to the back table, wait, when when she brought it over to the back table, she handed it to me. I only received the top part of the piece. It was ripped kind of like an L shape, and just the top came off. My boss was still holding the bottom part, which was most of the piece. I was looking at it and then at her and said, because I guess she tried to hand me the piece of art and it ripped in half. So she was holding one piece and I was holding the other. So I was kind of just like, uh. Then she looked at it and started to freak out for obvious reasons because it was a piece of art that was ripped that we were framing. I told her not to worry, that I would handle it, and I called over another worker customer who was proficient in weaving, and she said she could handle the project. My boss quickly thanked me, and then we both walked up front because we had an order in. It was a middle aged woman with her college aged son who was clearly unhappy with her, but the reasons were unknown. They had a few pieces they wanted to get framed, but the mother was indecisive on what she wanted. The son was irritated and picked out some nice options, but the mother was being weird about his picks. He threw his hands up and said whatever and then walked out. He walked in and out several times due to his inability to handle his mother's attitude with us and himself. And then at that point, I like spontaneously passed out. Like that was the end of that dream, and I was kind of just asleep. And then I woke up in the woods. So this dream that I woke up into, I was laying on the ground in the woods, and it was like wet and chilly, but not quite cold yet. And the wetness was probably like dew. So
Mm.
I got up and I was staring over a fence that was right on like the edge of the forest into an open window with a yard in between. It was late at night, dark and chilly. The window was open and letting out a bright light. There was a woman sitting on the couch reading and chatting with another person. I got closer to the window until I was spotted, and she asked me to come in. So basically, I started off in the forest, sleeping on the grass. I got up, I saw that I was on the edge of the forest, and on the other side of this fence was like a really long yard. to a house. And so I basically crept up through the yard right to the house window and was looking in at who was sitting on the couch. So obviously that they looked at me and invited me in their house. Like, basically, if you're gonna
Yeah.
sit there
This is very
watching
interesting.
me, you
Yeah.
might as well just come in. So I got close to the window until I was spotted and I was asked to come in. I crawled into the window, onto the couch, and then sat on the floor, feeling slightly ashamed that I got caught, knowing what I was doing was wrong, but whatever. I did know who the person was. I sat there while she talked to me about a variety of things and offered me a book to read. She said
Mm-hmm.
how important it was to her life. I took the book, only saying thank you. Her husband then walked in and chatted with her for a moment, and then they walked out of the room. I followed them into what ended up being my bathroom, but arranged differently. So it was my bathroom in their house, but arranged differently.
Mm-hmm.
I was talking to you about this the other day about how when I have dreams, the places sometimes it seems to be like a bunch of different places that I'm familiar with
Yeah.
morphed into one place. So I feel like there's aspects to that in this.
Mm-hmm.
So the husband was looking into the mirror while his wife continued to chat to him. I was standing behind him and then they left the room. Then it was just me staring into the mirror, which the reflection was blurred of myself and juxtaposed. So it was like a weird, different version of myself. At that moment, the woman walked back into the bathroom and told me that there was something off with my leg. I looked down at my leg and it was cut at the knee. And holding my knee up was a very small person who resembled a fae of some sort.
Ooh.
They seemed frustrated with having to carry my weight. They were
Well,
like
yeah.
acting as like a peg leg for me.
Poor things.
They looked up at me and then continued to focus their attention to the room set up that laid out every time we were stationary. So every time I was standing still, if I looked behind me, there was a dance club that they were like DJing, but while they were holding my leg up. I looked back up and I laughed because at this point it was just ridiculous. And then I was back outside running through the forest behind the fence with a few other women. It was gorgeous and mossy, and the moonlight was shining in, highlighting the roots and everything. Though it was dark, yeah, the moon lit up the green pathways, and then I woke up.
Mm. I love that. It's interesting. I'm thinking about Freud's perspective of like the first dream being a throwaway. While I don't agree with that, just this specific example, the second dream was just had so much depth to it. And
Yeah.
that's just something too to reflect on, like what was the, I guess maybe the purpose, or like if that first dream is, could it be like an introductory, like an introduction to the second dream? Like they got to be linked, or is it just
Well,
we are
and
moving through?
what I was saying earlier was that when I was looking into this dream within a dream, sometimes it was going deeper into your unconscious. So there's different levels. So
Yeah.
I'm thinking that the first dream was a surface level work stress dream, where then the second
Mm-hmm.
level was deeper and had more, it was more mysterious, more like deep well of information type of dream that I just had to work harder to understand.
Yeah, I like that. And of course, what stood out to me is the symbols of the tree in the house, since we've done a few. I think actually those two were in one episode
They were
where
in
we
the
did our
same, yep.
comment. Yeah, they were in the same one. And I love the fact that you woke up in the forest as if it was your home. Like I don't know if when you woke up, you were kind of like, why am I here? Or just like, it was like, it just
It
felt,
felt very familiar and
yeah,
comfortable. So even though I had the
right.
cure, because I'm with the dream within a dream, you're lucid the whole time, whereas the false awakening, you're not
Yeah.
lucid. You either become lucid or you wake up.
Mm-hmm.
And waking up, laying in the grass, I knew I was in a dream, but I didn't
Mm-hmm.
feel concerned or scared. I didn't even really feel cold. Like it was chilly out, but I wasn't feeling like cold, like sugar
Mm-hmm.
cold. And it all felt familiar and safe.
Yeah.
There's an aspect of it where like, yeah, there was some like things that I was kind of ashamed of doing, but I wasn't like super anxious. And I made fun of some of the stuff that I was experiencing too. And then
Mm-hmm.
ending with like being naked with these three women and we're running through the forest and it's just the moon glowing, highlighting the greens of the moss and the roots and the trees. There's something so like, I don't know, magical about that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I wonder what
especially
the moon
since,
was at.
yeah. Do you have the date for
I think it was
this
June
dream
6th of this year.
of this year?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll look.
Yep.
And
June
so
6th, 2024.
what stood out to me also with the tree in the house, like, so the way I connected to that, just in my perspective, was wisdom and consciousness. And it felt as if, especially because she handed you a book that was important to her, it was about her life or something,
Yeah, she said it wasn't
right?
about
Was
her life,
that,
but it was
yeah.
very important to her life.
Oh, important to her life. So I feel like there was some sort of like teaching that was happening, or just like an
Yeah.
expansion of your consciousness, is kind of what I got from that. So
Like passing down knowledge.
yeah, especially because, yeah, just waking up in the forest, and I think about just that comfort of nature. And I personally observe, nature to be the teacher. And so, yeah, it just, for me, I was like, oh my gosh, like it was just so cool. It was a really
It's
cool
just
dream.
funny how it interweaves, you have like a really serious aspect of it and then a more like human aspect of it and then a absolute ridiculous like so far out there weird abstract surreal experience and then back to like magical and feeling really connected and in itself it was like a whole journey.
Yeah. Okay, so I
But they
looked up the
always are.
chart for that day, and the moon was in Pisces.
Oh,
Like
interesting.
it would have been that night, right? It would have been the night of June 26th.
Yeah, so it was
Yeah, that was in
June
Pisces.
6th was the
Or June 6th or 26th.
6th.
Oh, okay. Never mind. Let's see. Let's edit this. I was like, look at that synchronicity. So we'll see um what we have here. Okay, so the moon was in Gemini,
Yeah,
and
it felt
yeah,
like it felt I could see the Gemini more than the Pisces honestly because of that
yeah.
doubling of
And
the
the learning
dreams
too.
and the
Yeah.
learning and just like being passed down wisdom and feeling yeah.
Yeah, that was actually a stellium in Gemini. So the moon, Venus, Sun, Mercury, and Jupiter. Well, okay, actually I remember this. Yeah, this was like a really peak time. So that's interesting. Very cool. So it would have been also, I think it was possibly a new moon too. Maybe it was the day of the new moon. But yeah, that's a really cool dream. And I definitely, just with that, I definitely get the sense of the dream within a dream versus the false awakening. And I can see that I don't really have many dreams within a dream. I do have the false awakenings a lot. And I think a lot of that goes in hand with the sleep paralysis. And I was seeing that connection online. And yeah,
And that's
it definitely
interesting
makes
because
sense.
you have sleep paralysis. I've never had sleep paralysis before. So
Mm-hmm.
if you it's like very in line with our dream
Yeah.
experiences. That's
Yeah.
so interesting. That aspect, that other layer to it is also just it just
Yes. Yeah, I'm gonna have to look through my dream journals to see if I've had any dream within a dreams, but honestly, I can't really recall. I'm sure I've had like one or two, but nothing like where it's like, oh my gosh, this is really profound. So we'll see what happens though. Maybe I'll have one here soon,
maybe you'll have one tonight.
right? And I will definitely share with you all that. Awesome. Well, I'm curious. The chat's kind of quiet, which is totally cool, but I'm curious of you all's thoughts of what we discussed, and if you have had any dream within a dream experience, you can leave that in the chat live if you desire or in the replay. I will say also that these live chats will be occurring on our Journey Through the Innerverse YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
So tonight was an oddball situation as we had to wait for our account just to be activated for live streaming in that way. So yeah, next week you can anticipate us to be over on the other channel. So definitely subscribe there. We're going to be also slowly uploading all of the past live streams that we've had here on Urania Universe channel to that channel. So everything will be there in like a little database, and we'll make some cool playlists so we can have those like categorized for you, because we actually have a lot.
We
We've been
do.
doing this since like the end of 2023. I think it was like November, maybe December of
I
2023.
think it was even, I think we didn't even start getting on chats until like February.
Oh, was it? Oh, I thought it was in
Yeah.
December. Oh,
Yeah,
okay. So
no,
yeah.
we've been, it's been even shorter, but we do have a
Yeah, but we have a
lot.
lot. We have a lot. So that'll definitely be there for you all. And yeah, Jay says I've had both of those, Dream Within a Dream and False Awakenings. Awesome. Well, I'm sitting here thinking, do I have any last words on this topic? Do you have anything, Alexis? Or
I
any
mean,
last words in general?
I love the dream within a dream and the looping process. False awakening, not so much, but the dream within a dream, I think it's so interesting, and I'm always like ready to dive deeper and deeper. And we both are very curious to see how your guys' experiences with these are. Share the topic either on the Spotify or through the email. Or even on here on the YouTube, let us know what your experiences are.
Mhm.
And yeah, I hope you guys are back next week to listen and chime in.
Absolutely. Yeah, so we are open to taking dream submissions if you want to submit a dream so that we can share and discuss and interpret the dream. You can submit your dream to the innerversepodcast at gmail.com. I need to have all this written down. Yes, the innerversepodcast at gmail.com is where you can submit your dream. Also, if you have any topics or anything you want to discuss pertaining to dreams, you can submit it to our email address or just share via the comments on any of these episodes. We would love to learn and just share on so many topics with you guys. So I think that I've covered everything. And yeah, thank you everyone for being here.
Thank you so
We
much.
hope to see you again next week. Thank you for listening and have beautiful, sweet dreams, everyone. See
Bye.
you later. Okay.